Before the deluge drowned the world, before Noah's ark cleaved the raging waters, a clandestine insurrection nearly extinguished humankind from existence. This wasn't a plot hatched by Lucifer, nor the machinations of the serpent in Eden. A different force arose, an angel, a celestial commander of heaven's watchers. His name was Semjaza. Gazing down from the celestial heights, he beheld the daughters of men, and in their beauty his divine purpose fractured. A consuming desire seized him, and with a voice that echoed like a celestial firestorm, he swore an oath with 200 angels, forging a pact of profound betrayal. On that fateful night, the gates of heaven creaked open, and angels descended upon the earth. They arrived not as guides or guardians, but as conquerors, their intent to corrupt, to mingle the sacred with the mortal. From this unholy union sprang forth the Nephilim, giants, monstrous beings, so intrinsically violent, so profoundly unnatural, that God, in his infinite sorrow, proclaimed, "My spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is surely mortal." Thus the great flood was conceived. But the true horror lies here. The Book of Enoch, a text shrouded in mystery and controversy, whispers that Semjaza remains bound, imprisoned, awaiting a judgment that reverberates through the ages. Consider this chilling possibility. If Semjaza possessed the power to lead celestial beings astray, to corrupt the very fabric of heaven, what cataclysm awaits the world when, or if he ultimately rises again? And even more disturbingly, could his influence already be subtly at play, so interwoven into the tapestry of our reality that we fail to recognize its source? Pause for a moment and let your imagination soar with me. Picture the heavens vast and glorious, bathed in golden light, resounding with angelic choirs in an atmosphere of perpetual peace. Stationed within this divine order were the Watchers, a select group of angels. They were not ordinary beings, nor were they weak. They stood as guardians entrusted by God himself to observe and protect the children of men. Meditate on the gravity of this responsibility. They weren't granted dominion over the earth. Mankind was not theirs to possess. Their sacred role was to observe with vigilance, to guide with wisdom, and to protect with unwavering dedication. But here, the narrative takes a chilling turn. When power is entrusted to a being imbued with free will, even a celestial angel desire can twist the purest duty into a force of profound destruction. This is precisely what transpired. From among the Watchers, a single voice rose, resonating with unprecedented authority. A commander, a leader, an angel, whose very presence exuded power, whose words crackled with celestial fire. Semjaza. While others grappled silently with temptation, Semjaza dared to give it voice, to breathe life into the unspoken. That single act, the transformation of a forbidden thought into articulate words, ignited a rebellion that irrevocably altered the course of the world. But before we delve too deeply, let me pose a question to you. Have you ever observed that temptation rarely assaults us head-on? It doesn't descend like a sudden storm, overwhelming us instantly. Instead, it begins as a faint whisper, a fleeting thought, a flicker of curiosity, seemingly insignificant at first. But when we lend it our ear, when we nurture it with attention, it spreads like an uncontrollable wildfire, consuming everything in its path. This was the insidious strategy employed by Semjaza. He whispered seeds of rebellion into the receptive hearts of angels who were sworn to unwavering loyalty. He transformed the unthinkable into the suddenly possible. In that pivotal moment, the very foundations of heaven's order began to crumble and disintegrate. Now most are familiar with the story of Lucifer, the prideful angel cast down for daring to exalt himself above God. But the narrative of Semjaza diverges significantly. Lucifer rebelled against God's divine throne, a challenge to ultimate authority. Semjaza rebelled against God's very creation, a corruption of the divine design. Can you discern the crucial distinction? One was a cosmic act of prideful defiance, a challenge to God's sovereignty. The other was an act of cosmic corruption, an assault on the integrity of existence itself. Semjaza harbored no ambition to usurp God's throne. His desires were focused elsewhere on something entirely different, something forbidden: humanity. The Book of Enoch recounts that he gazed upon the daughters of men, and an all-consuming desire enveloped him, eclipsing his divine purpose. Fueled by this forbidden longing, he swayed 200 others to follow him, binding them into a pact that would forever shatter the delicate equilibrium between heaven and earth. But here lies the aspect that truly haunts my thoughts. If angels, beings created in celestial glory, dwelling in the very presence of God, could be so easily deceived and led into rebellion, what does that reveal about our own susceptibility? How vulnerable are we in our earthly existence to the subtle whispers of corruption that pervade our world today? This is where the story becomes even more chilling. The Bible, in its concise narratives, offers subtle hints of this ancient rebellion, often overlooked or misinterpreted. Genesis 6 speaks of the sons of God, who beheld the daughters of men and took them as wives, driven by lustful desires. From these illicit unions arose the Nephilim, the giants, the mighty warriors of old, the men of renown. But the Book of Enoch meticulously fills in the missing details, painting a vivid and terrifying portrait of this celestial transgression. It provides names, clarifies motives, and reveals that Semjaza orchestrated and spearheaded this descent into utter darkness. Now, some may wonder, why is Semjaza's name absent from the canonical Bible? Why is the Book of Enoch often deemed apocryphal, even forbidden by many Christian churches? Perhaps the more profound question to consider is this: was it omitted simply because it was never intended for inclusion in the canon, or was it deliberately removed because it unveils truths too unsettling, too uncomfortable about the spiritual warfare in which we are still actively engaged? Ponder that for a moment. Before Noah, before the impending flood, before the weight of divine judgment came crashing down upon the earth, there existed a critical moment of decision. One angel spoke, 200 agreed, and the fate of the world was irrevocably sealed. But here is where I wish to leave you at the close of this chapter. What manner of leader must Semjaza have been to convince holy angels, beings of celestial glory, to turn against the very God they were created to serve? What potent words did he wield? What seductive promises did he utter? And what compelling reasons could possibly induce them to follow him into a sin that would unleash unparalleled destruction upon the entire earth? The Book of Enoch unveils precisely how Semjaza accomplished this feat, revealing the chilling oath they swore together, binding them to their dark purpose. Close your eyes and let your imagination transport you to this pivotal scene. The night sky stretched out above ancient Earth is ablaze with the light of countless stars. Humanity, still in its infancy, is innocent, fragile, and utterly unaware of the celestial drama unfolding above them. High in the heavens, the watchers gaze down upon the world. They are meant to guide and protect humanity, but seeds of desire have taken root in their hearts, threatening to corrupt their divine purpose. At the epicenter of this growing desire stands Semjaza. The Book of Enoch portrays him with stark clarity. Semjaza beheld the daughters of men, and an overwhelming lust consumed him, clouding his judgment and eclipsing his celestial duty. But he knew that he could not act alone. If he descended to earth without support, the full force of God's wrath would fall squarely upon him, leading to his utter destruction. He feared the consequences of his actions, the isolation of sin, so he crafted a plan, a scheme to share the burden of his transgression. He gathered the watchers, the other angels stationed, to observe humankind, 200 in total. Each one was radiant, each one mighty, each one caught between unwavering loyalty to God and the forbidden allure of earthly desire. With words as sharp and piercing as a celestial sword, Semjaza spoke, "Let us descend to the daughters of men and take wives for ourselves. Let us beget children with them, creating a new lineage upon the earth." Can you feel the weight of that declaration, the first angelic proposal to step beyond the boundaries of heaven's explicit command? At first, silence reigned, a silence born of fear, unease, and internal conflict. The other watchers exchanged glances, their celestial faces etched with doubt and apprehension. They understood that this was not merely an act of personal sin, it was an act of cosmic treason, a rebellion against the very order of creation. They had been created holy, their very essence radiating with divine purity. To transgress this sacred boundary would be to fundamentally distort their nature, to unravel the fabric of their being. And so they hesitated, caught between their divine purpose and their burgeoning desire. But Semjaza was cunning, a master manipulator. He sensed their hesitation, their underlying fear, their latent temptation. He seized upon these vulnerabilities, transforming them into weapons to achieve his sinister aim. He said, "I fear that you will not agree to carry out this deed, and I alone shall bear the punishment of a great sin, facing the full force of divine judgment." Did you grasp the subtle manipulation in his words? He skillfully played upon their fear of isolation, their innate desire to belong. He essentially argued, "If I undertake this alone, I will be utterly destroyed, consumed by the wrath of God. But if we all participate together, the punishment will be diluted, the burden shared, and none of us will face the full weight of divine retribution." This is the true power of persuasion, the ability to exploit the weaknesses and insecurities of others. He seized upon their guilt, their uncertainty, their hidden desires, and twisted them into a false sense of unity, a perverse camaraderie born of rebellion. He made betrayal sound safe, sin seem manageable, and rebellion appear almost brotherly. Slowly, one by one, the watchers succumbed to his influence, their resistance crumbling under the weight of his persuasive arguments. The Book of Enoch recounts that they swore an oath together, a binding covenant of darkness. 200 angels standing on the slopes of Mount Hermon raised their voices in unison, committing themselves to Semjaza's treacherous plan. Imagine that moment, a pact forged not in the shadows, but under the very stars that God himself had meticulously placed in the sky. They swore together, holding each other accountable, locking themselves into a cycle of corruption from which escape seemed impossible. With that oath, the line was crossed, the Rubicon breached. They were no longer watchers, protectors of humanity. They were rebels, traitors to their divine purpose. The heavens themselves seemed to tremble in response to their transgression. The earth waited in anticipation, bracing for the consequences of their actions. Soon, humankind would feel the full weight of their descent, their lives irrevocably altered by the decisions made on that fateful night. But let us pause here, because there is a deeper truth to be gleaned from this pivotal moment. Have you ever noticed that evil rarely operates in solitude? It invariably seeks company, a desire to share the burden of guilt. Gossip thrives on eager ears, corruption demands partners, and sin feels safer when it is shared, diluted among a group. Semjaza profoundly understood this fundamental principle of human and angelic nature. He knew that the most potent rebellions were not fueled by pride alone, but by a carefully cultivated sense of unity, a dark covenant forged in shared transgression. That is why this oath is so terrifying. It wasn't merely a collection of individual angels making a reckless decision. It was a covenant, a solemn vow, an unbreakable promise to descend into sin, together a pact that resonated with profound and lasting consequences. Covenants once forged possess an inherent power, a binding force that shapes the destinies of those who enter into them. The Book of Enoch even suggests that this is why the mountain upon which they swore this oath was named Mount Hermon, derived from the root word herem, meaning curse. It became a cursed place, tainted forever by the dark intentions sworn upon its slopes on that single night, a night when angels consciously chose forbidden desire over unwavering holiness. Think about that for a moment. An entire mountain rendered cursed for eternity, all because of a single night when angels yielded to temptation, prioritizing their own selfish desires over their sacred duty. And here is the question we are left grappling with. Why would they do this? Why would celestial beings radiant in glory willingly exchange the very presence of God for the fleeting gratification of corruption? Was it solely driven by lust, a purely physical desire? Or was there something deeper, a more insidious motivation lurking beneath the surface? Perhaps it was the promise of creating their own legacy, their own race, a way to emulate God Himself, to usurp the divine power of creation. Because what they unleashed upon the world was not simply an act of rebellion, it was the birth of something monstrous, something that would forever alter the course of history. The oath was sworn, the watchers were bound, and soon they would descend to earth, bringing with them untold chaos and destruction. When their feet touched the soil, history itself would be shattered, the delicate balance between heaven and earth irrevocably broken. Humanity would be changed forever, and from their sin would spring forth the Nephilim, the giants harbingers of violence and corruption. When heaven touched earth, the oath was sworn. 200 angels irrevocably bound together under the command of Semjaza, their destiny sealed. Now it was time to execute their treacherous plan. Imagine the scene unfolding. Night descends upon the earth, shrouding the land in darkness. Humanity sleeps in blissful innocence, unaware of the celestial drama about to erupt into their world. The stars blaze brightly in the night sky, but on this particular night, even the heavens themselves seem to hold their breath, anticipating the impending transgression. Then it begins. One by one, ethereal figures emerge from the celestial realm, radiant, otherworldly beings descending from the heavens. Their light pierces the darkness as they fall, not in glory, but in rebellion, their descent a perversion of their divine purpose. Their wings stir the air, creating a subtle vortex of energy. Their forms shimmer with the remnants of heaven's brilliance, a haunting reminder of what they have forsaken. But their hearts are already consumed by corruption, their minds enslaved by forbidden desire. They land upon the slopes of Mount Hermon, the cursed mountain, the site of their dark oath. Their feet, once pure and untainted, now press into the earthly soil, contaminating it with their rebellion. In that single moment, heaven has touched earth in the most forbidden way, a transgression that will resonate through the ages. At the head of this fallen host stands Semjaza, his eyes burning with a fierce determination, his voice commanding silence. Around him, the other watchers wait, hesitant but bound by their solemn oath, their faces reflecting a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. And then they move, stepping out of the realm of the celestial and into the world of humankind. They walk among men, approaching the daughters of men with seductive whispers and veiled promises. They offer tantalizing glimpses of power, beauty, and knowledge, corrupting their innocence and sowing the seeds of discontent. Slowly, women are taken as wives, consorts to angels, their unions defying the natural order. And from these unholy unions, something unnatural is born. The Book of Enoch tells us that the offspring of these angels and women were giants, the Nephilim. But banish any images of gentle giants from your mind. These were not benevolent beings, protectors of the innocent. These were monstrous creatures of immense size and strength, towering over men with insatiable appetites that could never be fully satisfied. Initially, they devoured the food of men, consuming vast quantities of resources and leaving behind famine and despair. But when even that proved insufficient to quell their hunger, They turned to flesh, their appetites becoming increasingly depraved. They devoured animals, consuming entire herds in a single feeding frenzy. Then they turned to mankind, preying upon the very beings they were meant to protect. Soon they even turned upon each other, engaging in gruesome acts of cannibalism, their violence escalating beyond all control. Can you imagine the utter horror, the parents watching helplessly as these towering half-breed creatures roamed the earth, crushing, killing, and consuming everything in their path, their actions a blatant perversion of the natural order? A world once peaceful and innocent, a testament to God's creation, now transformed into a living nightmare, a landscape of blood and despair. This was not merely a corruption of the body, a physical distortion of nature. This was a corruption of the soul, a spiritual defilement that permeated every aspect of existence. But the Nephilim were not the only form of corruption that the Watchers brought with them. The Book of Enoch reveals that the fallen angels taught mankind forbidden knowledge, secrets that humanity was never meant to possess, truths that would unravel the very fabric of their society. Semjaza himself taught enchantments and root cuttings, sorcery and spells, granting mortals access to the dark arts. Others taught the signs of the stars, the movement of the moon, the secrets of metals and weapons. Think about the implications of this. Humanity, once simple and pure, living in harmony with nature, was suddenly armed with knowledge far beyond their capacity to wield it responsibly. Weapons of war, occult magic, seductive arts, and vanity became commonplace. The Watchers poured poison into mankind's mind, corrupting their thoughts and desires, leading them down a path of destruction. Azel taught them to make swords, knives, and shields, transforming them into instruments of death. Barakio taught astrology, leading them to believe in the power of celestial bodies to influence their destinies. Kokabel revealed the constellations, unlocking secrets of the universe that were not meant for mortal eyes. And Semjaza, the leader of the rebellion, taught sorcery itself, granting humans the ability to manipulate the forces of darkness. Do you see what happened? They weren't simply satisfying their own lustful desires. They were actively reshaping humanity in their own distorted image, corrupting their minds and twisting their souls. They were raising up an army of corrupted men and monstrous giants, transforming the world into a reflection of their own depravity. Soon, the earth was filled with violence, a landscape of bloodshed and despair. Genesis 6:11 states, "The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence." Now you understand why this wasn't just a matter of human sin. It was a carefully orchestrated act of angelic corruption, a deliberate attempt to defile God's creation and plunge the world into chaos. The Watchers had defiled the very essence of creation, corrupting the natural order and twisting the divine design. Imagine the cries of mankind, the pleas for salvation, echoing across the ravaged landscape. Imagine the terror of villages burned, families devoured, innocents, destroyed, a world meant to reflect the glory of heaven, now drowning in blood and chaos. And at the center of it all, watching with grim satisfaction, was Semjaza, the architect of this cosmic tragedy. Now let me ask you this. What manner of leader must Semjaza have been to take beings of light, angels, who once stood in the very presence of God, and transform them into shadows, corrupting their purity and twisting their purpose? What kind of influence does it take to convince angels, beings who had witnessed the divine majesty firsthand, to willingly give up all of that for the fleeting gratification of forbidden desire? 1. So, as we've explored, the story of Semjaza is much more than just a forgotten tale of angels and giants. It's a powerful reminder of how easily even the most righteous can be led astray, and a chilling exploration of the pervasive nature of temptation and corruption. It really makes you think about the unseen battles that might be playing out around us, doesn't it? I hope this deep dive into the Book of Enoch and the story of Semjaza has sparked your imagination and given you something to ponder. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave your comments, questions, and insights down below. What resonated with you most? What are you still wrestling with? Let's get a discussion going. And if you enjoyed this exploration of ancient mysteries and celestial conspiracies, please consider subscribing to the channel. That way you won't miss part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the consequences of Semjaza's actions and their potential relevance to our world today. Plus, there will be future videos that examine this ancient story. I hope to see you back then.